don't know why most people that talk, that do these recordings will start by drinking something, but I just did. So hey, good afternoon now, and welcome to this broadcast. If you're just tuning in, that I've entitled Making Civo, and I'm hoping that my Malawian friends will just know what that means. But my other friends that might be tuning in and listening to this from other parts of the world, I guess the lessons we're working through will make sense as we go. All right. So who is there? Just trying to check out first who is there, who's part of the program. I'm gonna wait for a little bit to make sure that everyone that wants to tune in is there. Yeah. So it's a Sunday, like I said, Sunday afternoon here. I just got out of fairly recently. It's been an hour out of church. Through the summer, we've had the opportunity of listening to different people, share, and that's been such a rich experience for me, because, often it's myself and my buddy Jeremiah that preach, and so to just take the time to listen to other communicators and thinkers and to hear what thus says the Lord in and through them in this season has been a very useful thing. This morning was a really good time. Hope you all enjoyed yourself or are enjoying yourself. Part of the reason why I wanted to start to do this broadcast is I've realized that we've been talking about a lot of really difficult things, and that's important, right? We don't want to avoid difficult things in our life, but we've been talking about a lot of difficult things, and sometimes when opportunities present themselves, we have to take the time to talk about some of the things that make us happy. And so part of that for me is, for a long time I've been reflecting on my journey, and this one is probably the most untold of my journeys. And so I figured, why not right now, while people are either locked into their homes or they have limited mobility, why not use this opportunity for us to sit Pakonde, that's where I am, Pakonde, Kunyumba, which means, I'm on the veranda, if you may, at my house. And by the way, veranda, they may also need to be defined. I understand. We come from different cultures. So, but yeah, just outside, chilling, and figured, let's chat. So, making Civo. So, Civo United is a club located in the capital of Malawi called Lilongwe. For those of you guys that have traveled to Malawi, you're familiar with this. And matter of fact, Civo Stadium is the big stadium that many of you would have to have possibly driven around when you're going in town, or you're going to the capital city, or you're going to the airport, and so on and so forth. And Civo is that club right there. It's one of the biggest, most historical clubs in Malawi, legendary, if you may. It's endured the true test of time. The other rivals that we have in Lilongwe, the rivals to Civo, is a club named Silver Strikers. So Civo has traditionally, it continues to be, I believe, sponsored by the government, essentially. There's a nuance to that. Sponsored by the government. And then Silver Strikers has traditionally been sponsored by the Reserve Bank of Malawi. And again, both big clubs, traditionally Silver being, bigger than Civo. But I might say, and most people may agree with this, that Civo has produced the most young talent in the country. And so the contribution of the club was massive. I got to Civo 17, 18 years old maybe. And I got there in the off season in a mix of kind of like being a ball boy, in a way, ball boy at these practices, but also sort of like hoping to practice with the big boys every once in a while, right? Because what we had discovered of what happened in the off season is that some players just would not show up to the practices in the off season. The trainings are just kind of like fun; they are not mandatory. So some players didn't show up. So every once in a while, when you popped up and you were lucky, you were invited to make up the numbers. Some of my brothers that are here, let me see, who is here? We have Temba watching with us. Temba, can you hear me? Daliso, Chilindiza, watching with us. Hope you guys can hear me. Hope the sound is clear. And so I got there, and now some players that show up to places like this, to clubs like this in the off season, they show up because they were invited. I wasn't invited. I just we show up. We were not invited. We're just hoping that every once in a while we'll get to practice, and the place is very, very intimidating as is, right? Because like I said, this is a historical club, and I'm sharing this because not only is this helpful for sports people or like football people to learn kind of like the ins and outs of these processes, but I also think it's useful for us every time we are going through any kind of transitional season. When we are in the process of transitioning, whether that is in our careers, or whether that is we've moved to a different country, to move to a different city, a change of jobs and things like that. I think some of the concepts that we'll talk about here are going to be helpful in that. So I showed up to, like I said, I showed up to Civo, showed up uninvited. Some of the players that came even in the off season, some of the young guys came invited. And so you kind of almost feel right there as you show up that you are really on the outside of whatever it is that is taking place here, whatever the dynamics that are forming here. But to add to that, I had stepped into a situation where at that time, for that short window, Civo, and by the way, like I said, I'm sitting Bakonde outside, so you may hear cars passing by. It's possible there may be interruption with the kids at the house. I just think that's okay. We have professionalized everything, not everything has to be so polished and so professional. Sometimes we can just sit and talk. So that's what we're doing here. So don't mind the interruptions. They're part of the whole thing. But so it just so happened that at the time that I got there to the ball club, the club was being coached by one of Malawian football's biggest legends. If you're Malawian, and if I saw a lot of you guys tune in, I would have asked if you know who that is. So without cheating, even if you're watching this broadcast later, who do you think this was? So one of Malawi's biggest legends. And the thing is, it had been known in football traditionally, and that it has changed quite a bit actually. It was almost always assumed that the best players never made the best coaches, right? The best players never made the best coaches. Well, until you saw, a player like Pep Guardiola go on to achieve what Pep Guardiola has been able to achieve, until you saw Zinedine Zidane win 3 Champions Leagues in a row, and then that myth has been busted before us. But growing up, I'd grown up with that understanding, right? The best players never made the best coaches. And so to show up at a club that's being coached by a legend who at the time had already been successful was just straight like weird. So yeah, in the legend of the game that was coaching Civo was a man himself, young Chimodzi. All of Malawian football, some, if not a lot of African football knows or remembers young Chimodzi, a true legend of the game. And so Young was coaching Civo. I'd gotten there, again, like I said, uninvited. And one of the things that happened when I was there is that we would be practicing, like the big boys would be practicing, and then maybe they'll be missing a man or two, and they'll ask us to join in, and we'll be playing with them. And in the off season, sometimes Young will come, and he would just practice with us, which was amazing in itself, because even at that time, I can't remember how old he might have been, probably in his late 40s. He was out there as good as anybody. So, we're practicing, and sometimes he would practice with us. And when he would be there, when he would be playing, I would just get so nervous. I couldn't do anything. But there's a thing that Young always used to do in those days when he would show up to practice. I don't know, those of you guys that played at Civo or that supported Civo and so that went to watch the practices, I don't know if Young did the same thing at Civo, but he certainly always used to do this at Civo, where he would show up and he would just be up at the stands, and he wouldn't come through. He would just be watching from up in the stands, and he wouldn't come through until a little bit later in the training session. So I'd be out there when he was not there. I'd be out there and was getting used to being able to just do my thing, right? I had grown up with a freestyle type football, and so I could do a little bit of the dancing in the game. But I also, in my formative years, I played for a club called Black Eagles, and Black Eagles in Lilongwe was a 1-to-2 touch team. So it was a get the ball, give the ball type team. So that also just kind of helps you with the fundamentals, and it helps you with understanding space. And so I can do that, but then every once in a while I can improvise, because that's who I was as a football player. It's actually probably in my personality as well. It's just probably in my personality that I just felt like, why do certain things in training that then you won't do in the games? And so I kind of I grew up maybe taking risks in that way. So I'm at Civo, I'm practicing, and Young will come and he'll be up in the stands. And when he was in the stands, I had no idea he was there, so I could play my game and do my thing. And then the moment he would come down from the stands and he would come on the field, he was like, I can't do anything. I'm just frozen, right? And one day, and Young has a very interesting economy of words. He does not talk a whole lot. So one day, he just came to me and said, hey, essentially, from how I remember the conversation, it was something like, I'm in the middle of, practicing while he was on the field, and I'm doing my nervous things. And he comes through and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I don't have no answer, because I don't know what he's alluding to. And he's like, hey, I've watched you play from up there. I know that you can play. Just play. And it's like, whoa, he has been watching me. Like, that's wild. Like, how do you perform in front of a legend, right? How do you perform in front of a legend? Like, I wonder how Real Madrid players can play in front of Zinedine Zidane, because that's a different ball game. As a matter of fact, I actually wonder how, especially, I've been paying attention to how guys like James Rodriguez or even Eden Hazard, who played a little bit more of the role that Zidane himself plays. Like, if a guy like that gives you a vote of no confidence, I mean, that is problematic. And so I can feel for James Rodriguez. It's like, if Zidane implies that you can't do this job, like, that ought to really knock your confidence. And so it has to be very, very difficult to play in front of a guy like that. But when a guy like that loves you, I mean, you are just you're just feeling out of this world, right? And so he said that. He said, hey, I've watched you play, play your game. Just do it. I know that you can play. And that like just changed everything for me. And then the more proper off season came. And now, with that said, there are some advantages that I took, right? Opportunities that presented themselves that I took in order for me to be able to then break into the team and receive that form, because that's another thing too. Like, you could be practicing, you could be playing well in practice. As a matter of fact, you could be playing some friendly games and you could be doing well in the friendly games, but up until you sign that form, like, you are not a part of that team, my friend. And so a lot of players do a whole lot of so much good work, and then the closer to the season period comes and the forms begin to roll and you get no form. If you get no form, and that just speaks for itself as well. So now we are going to these like friendly games, and again talking about taking advantage of situations. Some of the games that we went and played against teams that were in the Premier League, which is a league below the league that Civo plays in. So we're playing against the Premier League teams. I had seen these teams before. So when I would be thrust into this midfield in this moment, it's like right now, before we start to play against the Admac Tigers of this world, before we start to play against friendlies against the MDCs, before we start to play against the Silvers, right now is the time to utilize this moment. And so wherever we'll go to Likuni, or like wherever we'll go to Doha, like when he would put me in there, like I understood that this was not the time to be shy. This was the time to show your full arsenal. At tryouts, we don't play one-touch, two-touch football at tryouts. This is not the time for that. Like, it's like sink or swim, right? So I'll be there and I'll be doing that. In the friendly games we were playing, I made sure that I showed something that was unique about me. And so I took advantage of that. The other advantage I took of is you had certain players that were incredible, that would show up really mildly to these off seasons, right? So like, for instance, for Civo, you had, let's say for instance, a guy like my friend Sinka. I mean, if Sinka took the game as seriously as Cristiano Ronaldo, for instance, I mean, Sinka had talent. He was unbelievable. He would show up with having trained very, very mildly, but like in the games you can just see, right? There's nothing that he couldn't do with a ball. He's incredible like that. But in these off seasons, guys like that won't play, so I took advantage of that. And I also remember, talking about legends, in a future episode, I'll feature some players that I think left a mark on me, not just as a football player, because remember, every time, at least for me, I'm talking about football. I'm not just talking about football. I'm using football as a metaphor for real life, So there's guys like, for instance, when I was practicing, we were playing at the time, and we were playing these friendly games against Premier League teams, and I remember when Peter Ngangira started to train, and he told my friend Bones and I, who were playing in the middle, and again also taking advantage of some of the legends of Civo that were transitioning, guys like Oscar and guys like Gaza, Andrew Nkolongo and guys like that, taking advantage of the season of transition. I think when I got there, Suzio Lungu had just transitioned. He had just gone back to school. I believe he was going to law school. And so, okay, the midfield is up for grabs. We can compete for it. And Peter, who was just transitioning from playing on the wings, coming now beginning to play inside, told Bonzo and I, said, if you guys play, if we play convincingly in the middle, then he was fine with transitioning back into the wings. That's what he told us. So that's also a boost in confidence, because you have a player that, at least for me, I'd always, as young as he was, I'd always really looked up to him. I think Peter, by the way, was a generational talent. Like, it's just, you saw him play in the games, at whatever. Silver, he did fine at Silver, he won things. But when Peter was playing at Civo, before his transition to South Africa and then Silver and all that, when Peter was playing at Civo and you were in practice and you're practicing against him, I mean, it was a long day. Because the other thing about him, and again, I'll share in future episodes about individual players, the other thing about him is he was deceptively fit. He was deceptively fit. Guys will do all sorts of really interesting things on their weekends. And then if you showed up to Civo on Monday, late morning, one of the things, there was only one person in the stadium going up and down the stairs, and that was Shoesman, Peter Ngangira. So, got to take advantage of a few of his words that became that were very encouraging to us. So yeah, it's those types of little things that you have to look at, you have to take advantage of, and you have to make moves when you see them, and so on and so forth. And then another thing. So then we play in these games, and again, like I said, we're playing in the Premier League games, and getting ready for the season, and then suddenly the first real friendly game comes, and it's against our biggest rivals in Silver Strikers at Silver. Showed up to the game. There was no way I thought in my mind that I could play in that game. Maybe, as a young man, maybe the last 15 minutes of the game. But Young sets up his team, and I'm starting. Right? I'm starting. But the interesting thing is, I am like clearly a central midfielder. I mean, I've played growing up quite a bit as a striker, but it was out of necessity, right? For the people I played with, they know this. Like growing up, when in the second half, in the 70th minute, I'll move to the midfield. It was more out of necessity, but not because this was my favorite place to play, like my favorite position to play. I was like probably fairly prototypical central midfielder, but I showed up to that game, and he put me on the wings, and it's against the late Manson Shaba Piri. So you have to show up, and you don't have too many other opportunities to lay your marker. These are the little moments when you have to show that you are actually prepared for the big stage. And so for me, I mean, my trick was one fun thing at the beginning, even if it doesn't pull off, one fun thing at the beginning to try and win the fans over, because then then you've laid notice. But the other thing that does, even to experienced guys like Shaba was, it begins to push them back a little bit. It begins to push them back a little bit, and it gives you a little bit more time on the ball. Which, by the way, time on the ball when you're playing at the big stage is something that you just have to know is there. Space is something you just have to know is there. Funny thing is, everyone watching from the stands thinks that there's plenty of space on the field. On the field itself, there is no space at all. You can't see it. So you just have to know from memory that this is what is taking place, and that there is actually space even if you couldn't see it. Yeah. So, oh hey, I'm recording something. Do you want to say hello? People are looking at you. See? Say hello, everybody. You're going to say hello? They're looking at you. Oh, run inside. Run. So like I said, we're just sitting Bakonde. We're chit-chatting. There may be some interruptions. Maybe another life lesson is that, what are interruptions? Maybe what we have known as interruptions aren't necessarily unnecessary interruptions, but it's actually what life itself is. I might actually argue that these are some of the most important, interactions in our lives are the things that we have called interactions, right? So, and part of this is because we have so professionalized our lives, and that our lives have become so linearly professional that we can't see everything else that is happening around us. The other thing about this, and maybe even having the family come through, family interrupt, if you may, is a reminder of something that we have lost track of. That we are here because of somebody, right? So when I'm looking at this story with the legend that was young Chimodzi, like, we are here because somebody loved us. We are here because somebody loves us. This isn't just about, family isn't just there to cheer us along on our way to going to do the thing that we think we are going out there to pursue. Like, family and friends and community and your church and my church are out there to be what life itself is. And I hope that you all understand that. So again, yeah, I'm at Civo. I'm playing for the legend that is Young Chimons, and I was comparing this experience to playing for a guy like Zinedine Zidane, somebody that has been an enigmatic figure in Spanish football, and now he is a coach, and you have to stand to play with him. Other players that have to get used to this type of experience soon will obviously be Juventus players, because Juve players have to play for Andrea Pirlo now. And my argument is, it's one thing to play for somebody who never did anything markable or remarkable in the game. It's a whole other thing to play around somebody who would be considered in the top 5 to me if you're Zinedine Zidane, top 20 to me if you're Andrea Pirlo, or something like that, of like just global football. I don't know. People look at football differently, obviously, but these guys that have been super successful in the game and that have been successful everywhere they have been. So I was comparing that to coming in and playing for Young Chimod. So I go and we have this friendly game against Civo, and oh man, we do the business. Actually, fun fact, I never lost a game against Civo. Strikers. On this game, on my debut, my friendly game, we won the game 2-1, and I did some really fun things. I think this was the moment. Like, it wasn't just like, because I did a lot of the things I did from memory, right? Like, one of the things that I learned playing at that level is that in my first season at least, my brain and my feet didn't coordinate very well. So there's a lot of things that I had to do out of muscle memory. There's going to be moments like that in your life. There's going to be moments like that when you're under pressure, where you have to do certain things and you have to do them. You're just doing them from muscle memory. That is not a bad thing. You are caring because you remember, not because you can see why you should care, not because everything makes sense, but you're caring because you know that this is the right thing to do. So yes, we beat Civo Strikers 2-1, and as I was leaving in the game, as we were getting out, did I finish the game? I don't know if I finished the game. I may have played to like 70th minute or something like that, 75th minute, which is a way of a coach telling you that I can see you featuring in my plans. And I was leaving the game and looking at the affection that I received from the people. I knew that I was slowly becoming a part of this fabric, right? So that is just a cool feeling, to be embraced, to feel like you're being seen, to feel like you're being embraced and you're being seen by the big players. As a matter of fact, one other thing that happened in the game is, I remember like competing. So there was periods where I was playing against Moffat Sinsamara on my side, and as we are playing, I have the late Andrew Mitengo behind me, Mingo, talking about legends of the game that you don't know about. I mean, guys like Mingo were spectacular. But I remember Mingo, in talking about somebody, we're here because somebody loved us. I remember Mingo saying, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you for a period to not come back. What? I mean, I know they're going to be yelling at me at the bar, on the bench for not tracking back. He said, no, I understand. I want you for a period to not track back. What I want you to do is I want you to let Monya come to me, and I want you to attack his defender. So just go and attack his defender. And like, I was so nervous. I kept coming back. Again, like I was a central midfielder really this is how I got trained to play. So like we're always tracking back, right? And as a winger, you're supposed to be tracking back. And they said, no, I want you to stay high up the pitch. Why? After a short period of staying up the pitch and attacking his defender a little too much, it is Monya's defender who started whining and complaining, so that Monya had to come back, and he now constantly had to deal with me defensively, so much so that he offered nothing going forward. This is like, I mean, as a young man growing up and just kind of like learning the game, like that was like a huge surprise to me. Is that when we are playing in the game, we're always manipulating space and time, and we have to understand positioning, and sometimes it has to be you insisting on something before the game itself turns and begins to behave a certain way. I thought that was beautiful. What a lesson to be learned in that game. And so yeah, played there, enjoyed really thoroughly, enjoyed that game, finished and realized that, well, maybe I actually could be again part of the furniture here. But in your first season, second season, you're always constantly. Even at that point, I had not signed the form yet. And then something really fascinating happened. Right before the season started, and so quickly, we heard a rumor that the legend, young Chimodzi, was going to be leaving Civo. Woo! So, you are loved and you are embraced, and you think that you're going to be a part of the team, and then the boss is leaving. That was like depressing for me. That was depressing because I understood the type of game that Young played, and I understood the type of game that Young insisted on, and I felt like it suited the way I grew up playing the game. It's like 1-2, we pass the ball to each other, we played, we really tried to play. He insisted on playing. Most coaches in the Super League in Malawi didn't insist on playing. They really like kicked and ran. Now, before you start to bash that, I want you to know that's a formula. It really is. There are some games where we did that with Civo, and with everyone buying into that system, a lot of really good things can happen as well. So it's not just like, oh yeah, it's kick and run. No, that also is a method. It's another way of looking at the game. We are going after the thing that helped us. But I can just say now, looking back as a mature person, that game didn't necessarily suit me. I like what Young used to do, and then Young was leaving, and then a really tricky thing happened. One evening, I was leaving practice, and I was about to jump in a bus when this black Mercedes pulled up on the side of the bus, almost like discreetly, not wanting to necessarily be seen. It was kind of like getting a little bit dark, and window went down, and someone called my name, and they said, hey, come over here. So I came over, and they said, hop in the car. And I was like, I hopped in the car. I was like, where are we going? He's like, the boss wants to speak to you. And I was like, what? Like, what is going on? Like, what's happening? We drove. This is weird to do, by the way. You don't just hop in. I hope you all don't do this. Don't just hop into a car, like a car that looks suspicious, and just start driving somewhere. But we drove to Silver Stadium and over into their clubhouse. And I'm like, what's going on? I go in, and as I go in, there's a dinner like set up. Lots of really fancy food. So we sit and we start eating. I know some of these guys, they're like, big men in Malawian football, but they are not like players, they are like officials, right? So they are Civo officials, and we're eating. And before we finished eating, Young, the legend, walks in. And like I said, Young Chimodzi was a man of very few words. He came in and he sat down and he just said, hey, I wanted you to know, I wanted you to hear from me that I am about to leave Civo. I'm returning to Silver. We all knew that he was going to be at Civo temporarily. Young played for Silver, that was his ball club. So at some point he would have to return. We just didn't know that he was going to return right before the beginning of a new season. And so I'm in there and they said, yeah, I'm returning back here to Silver and I see you, you are a very talented player and I don't want anyone ruining your talent. So I want you to move with me. I want you to come to Silver with me. It's up to you, of course, but I want you to come to Silver with me. Woo! Talking about turning your head, and it's like, think about it. So, again, I hadn't yet signed the form at Civo. This situation happened. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I'm at home, like, this is just making me sick. I mean, it's making me sick because I want to go with Young. But I'm so embraced at this point at Civo that I feel like I'm going to let someone down. I mean, do I let Civo down or do I let the legend down? What do you do? What would you do in that situation? Tell me. Like, I want to hear a little bit of your comments. I've been talking here for a long time. If you were faced with a situation like that, like what would you do? So I'm stuck in this weird place. I also want to hear your comments and thoughts that you guys have. I can't really see. I can see some people that are watching, but I can't really see if there are any comments. And so if you have any comments or any questions or a situation that you saw that you wanted me to speak into, please let me know. I want to interact with you a little bit. So yeah, hit me up. I think Oscar said he was going to be joining me later. We shall see if he will join. Yeah, he was supposed to be joining me. Okay, guess allow all viewers to request. Allow your viewers to request to join you as a guest pro. Yeah, I can see that. That is on. Okay, so I can share the broadcast. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, any questions, please let me know. And even if you watch this later and you have any thoughts and any questions, I wanna hear them. So, anyways, I'm at Civo. I'm at Silver. I'm at Civo at this time. Silver said that they wanted me. Hello. Hey, babe. Melissa. Melissa, can you text Oscar and see if he's still joining me?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just check if he's still intending on joining me. So, yeah, so I'm at Civo, and this is like a fever pitch moment. I mean, it's a wild fever pitch moment because I now have to make this decision to follow a legend I love, to someone I would love to play for, or to stay at Civo, a club and players that are at this point are showing faith in me. I'm not gonna lie, my head really turned because for 2 days following, I missed practices at Civo, and for 2 days I went and practiced at Silver, and I was a Silver strikers player. I mean, it's so what do you call it? Like we are tight margins at this point, right? I go over there. I'm at Silver, and I practice. In fact, I showed up to Silver, and really a weird thing happened. Like all these fans showed up because I'd played my friendly game against Silver and did so well. And when I showed up, like there were all these fans. I don't know if this was just part of the club culture, But so many people came to the practices that he was like, wow, like really, like we are about to do this. And they urgently want to give me a form, they want to sign me. And then over here, obviously, I'm missing at Civo for 2 days. It might have been 3 days I played for Silver. And yeah, I practiced at Silver. Then we have a game against Silver, has a game against MDC in Blantyre, which is a city about 4 hours south of us. So we got to travel to that game, and I'm gonna play for Silver. The day before, the night before the game, I got so sick. I had malaria. I got so sick, so that the bus came by to come pick me up. All these players are in there, and I was like, yeah, I was sick. I couldn't travel. So I was like, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I can travel. They leave. We'll see you on Tuesday at next practice, right? Okay. They leave. They go. It providentially that weekend, my friend Peter Ngangila came to my house, and like I say, Peter was so young, but he was already a legend at Civo. He came to my house and he said, hey, I've heard that Silver wants you to move and play for them, and I want you to know that I started my career there at Silver as a young man, and I'll tell you this, but it's up to you to make your decisions. And the other thing is, Peter is also like that. Peter is also has an economy of words. He doesn't talk a lot. And just for the idea that he drove to my house, like this left a huge impression on me. Because I looked up to him, and he said, yeah, so Silver is like that. When you go there, it's business. It's how this team functions, right? Civo is a team, is a club that develops players. They'll give you time. They'll allow you, will allow you to develop here. And then once you develop, you can make your choice. Which clearly, obviously, Peter himself ended up making. Went to South Africa and then went to Silver. Fine, he was an established, football player at the time. He could do whatever he wanted to do. But at that time, he was probably right. I wasn't ready. And then right before he left, before he hopped back in his car, he said, besides, I would like to have the pleasure of playing with you. And that was it. That sealed it for me, And so much, by the way, of what has happened in my life has emerged from what happened in that moment, right? So much of what developed in my life has emerged from what happened in that moment. Is like that one decision. Then, obviously, I later on saw the late Hadre Mumba. And the late Hadre Mumba was Civo's team manager. And he was furious that Silver was trying to turn my head. And he was like, I am going to destroy somebody out there. And I saw how furious he was, that I decided that I wasn't going to be the guy that added this animosity to the rivalry. So I made a decision instead to sign for Civo and to play for Civo, and remaining at Civo in this state, remaining at Civo then had big implications, which we'll talk about as we move forward in our next episodes. But today, I wanted to demonstrate what it looked like and what it looks like to play for a legend. Now, I'm a pastor, so I'm a be pastoral at the end of this. I'm gonna bring in scriptures just to add to this, because again, we are talking about football, but we are talking about life. And the scripture says that we are surrounded by a great crowd of witnesses, right? I always actually mess this thing up. Story for another day, but in our language in Chichewa, R's and L's don't have really very big implications in the way that words are. So sometimes we can not misuse them, but we can sort of like interchange them, which becomes a challenge when you're speaking in English, because in English, an interchange between an R and L can actually have much bigger implications. So, but the scriptures teaches us. So you remind me, I can't remember if it's a cloud of witnesses or a crowd of witnesses, but the idea is that we are surrounded by these saints that are cheering us on as we go through this journey called life, so that we are not alone. You know what I'm saying? We are not alone. And not only that, we also, our lives are being witnessed by others every day. They're being witnessed by our neighbors and our friends and our families and people in our homes, etc., etc. And so this is important. This matters. And if anything, if you pull some sort of a lesson here, pull the lesson, this idea, to be grounded, knowing that no one makes it where they make it alone. Like you are and I am not self-made. This is not true about who we are as a people. People have made, are actively contributing to creating, to making who we are as a people. So we are not self-made. And if you are a part of the Christian tradition, then you actually understand that everything was made at God's command. I might just be old school and old fashioned, but I still wholeheartedly believe that we are God's making, we are God's workmanship. The book of Ephesians say we are God's workmanship, we're God's pieces of art. You know what I'm saying? And providentially, I actually understood the game that way. It was always art. When I'm out there, I related more to the artistic side of the game that I related to the competitive side. The competition just came in because I understood that good art wins. Good art wins. And so, all sorts of different ways. But yeah, that is my, kind of like my understanding and my disposition and my feeling around this. And so, again, this has been the first episode of Making Civo, primarily surrounding the idea of playing for a legend, the legend that was young Chimodzi. I don't see Oscar tuning in. So what I want to do is I want to leave it up to you. Do you have any questions? I can't really see if there are any questions or any comments. But if you leave them in the comment section, I will come through later on. Let me see. Let me play around with this a little bit and just see if there may be a way of seeing other things. I definitely see the likes. I can definitely see the likes, but I can't see if there are any comments. So, yeah, if you have any comments, yes, Jay, I see you, my brother. I see you. If you have any comments, let me know either now or later. If you have any questions, let me know either now or later. And again, we are discussing football here, but we're talking about more than football. We're talking about life itself. And this has been the first episode of Making Civo, playing for a legend. More, my friends, more is to come. And tune in at around the same time next week when we continue our podcast. I should still finish this by praying for you. Right? Let me go ahead and pray for you. Father, in Jesus' name, I pray and thank you for all of my friends, everyone that is watching this podcast. Would you remind them as they go through this that they are fearfully and wonderfully made? Would you remind them that they are your workmanship everywhere they go, so that everywhere they go, by the time they leave, they ought to leave a piece of heaven behind. In everything, whether that's just at our work, I don't care. They are just doing accounting, I don't care. We are not just doing one thing, but we're always doing so many other things. We're not just doing one thing. So you remind them that they are your workmanship, your poem, your poema, your work of art. May they never lose sight. And even as we speak about people, I know that we help people understand spiritual truth and spiritual implications in our talk here today and in our future. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. God bless you guys. Peace.